Dr. Kimberly Sonnet-Reichel and I are really passionate about developing healthy school communities where everyone thrives. And we saw a need for schools to take a holistic approach to developing supportive school environments that really promote social emotional learning, mental health, and well-being for everyone in the school community. So that's students, parents, and staff, and families. We looked at the work of the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, or CASEL for short. They are world leaders in social emotional learning and research and practices. And they have developed a CASEL guide to school-wide SEL that we had a closer look at. And what we found is that it focused on a 3 to 5 year plans in 4 areas: building foundational support and plans. Secondly, strengthening the adult SEL. Third, strengthening student SEL, and then practices for continuous improvement. But what we found is that it's quite complex and challenging to implement. So I asked Kimberly the question, could we develop an assessment and growth plan resource for schools that takes the same systematic approach to developing supportive school environments, but that has a simplified, flexible, and easy to implement approach? She answered, yes, we can do that. And so over the next 2 years, we rolled our sleeves and developed the Assessment and Growth Plan Toolkit for school-wide well-being in SEL. The toolkit is really intended for schools to help identify where they're at and what they're doing well, to prioritize what they want to do next, and to give them support with growth planning of how to get there. This PowerPoint shows just a few slides of how the school-wide assessment and growth plan toolkit is outlined. And you can see on the bottom of each slide the website where it's hosted. It's at wellbeingbc.ca. The school guide contains 4 pillars. It has school policies, procedures, and processes. And so that addresses things like establishing an SEL team of champions, developing a communication plan, supportive discipline, a multi-tiered approach to student support, and a few other topics. Pillar 2 is developing supportive environments, both the social and the physical environment. And so that's looking at classroom climates, a focus on SEL for adults, as well as supportive physical environments. Pillar 3 is the teaching and learning practices and SEL instruction. So that is how teachers can integrate SEL instruction throughout the day, as well as research and evidence-based SEL programs and practices, and including child and youth voice and choice. And then the last pillar is family and community partnerships, and that's establishing authentic family partnership as well as aligned community partnerships. So it comes together in these 4 pillars that are shown just on this illustration from the toolkit. There's 3 components that I'm going to show you of the toolkit, and the first is the Assessment and Growth Plan Workbook. This slide shows an image of the workbook that is available digitally, and there's 4 pillars that are identified in the workbook, and basically schools can use this to assess what they're doing well and what they want more of, as well as how they're going to get there. The next tool is the actual resources for growth planning. On the website, it has an accordion drop-down menu with resources to help schools plan for growth in the areas that they've identified as priority areas. And lastly, we'll have a look at, on this slide, at the indicators of school-wide well-being. And it's a 4-indicator assessment that allows schools to look at how they're doing in their school so that they can prioritize where they want to start working on growth planning.
So the way that we started this journey is that I invited a couple of the school leaders, and I'll be very specific. So myself as the principal, our vice principal, we have a curriculum coordinator, and as well as a athletic director, and then also another vice principal who's in charge of learning. So we gathered around and we actually went through the toolkit, the indicator. And we just went with the rubric, and the rubric was so easy to use because it gives very descriptive descriptors of each of the pillars and how it's broken down. So as we went through it, we basically just went point by point, kind of like in a meeting format, and we just went point by point, and then we decided where we were at in the toolkit for each, gave it a number. We circled it, and then we made some comments on the side notes, and then we kept on going. And that took about 2 to 3 hours. It was a very fruitful, actually, meeting. What surprised me was actually, after using the toolkit, the results. I think we're quite a kind of a middle class independent school. And I was guessing that maybe without the toolkit, I would have focused more on probably processes and policies still. As a school leader, as the principal, I would have focused a little bit more on that. But what actually we needed to look at as a result of using the toolkit is more practices around, and we all came to consensus around the table about needing to focus more on the social and physical aspect of our supportive environment. And one example I can give you is that we all agreed that actually one of the pillars, the supportive environment pillars, specifically talking about adult well-being, our teacher well-being, their need of, this, our as school leaders, our social emotional awareness of how they're doing needs to be consistent. And is there a better way that we can gather data from our teachers, from the adults in the building, of how are they doing? Because we know that if they're well, then the students will also be able to thrive. And so that's another aspect that we're thinking, that actually it's not just a one-time thing. We need to consistently go back and look at that aspect. So those are some of the things that we found very impactful and very easy to use, very dynamic, very exciting conversation. So I'm looking forward, can't wait until we can dig a little deeper still with the resources. Yeah, so we actually started with the MTSS model for our school not too long ago, a couple of years, the multi-tier system of support model. And what we have is integrated into our school support system, a tier system where we actually intentionally have broken down learning, behavior, and well-being. And so as we have used that model, I needed a tool to be able to help us understand how we've been doing. Like how are we? Are we thorough enough, even using the MTSS model? Are there pieces that we're missing? And so I think the beautiful thing about the toolkit is that it actually helped me get a really thorough look of what we have been doing well with the MTSS model. And it really is a good complement, really good complement and a good checklist for our team to say, oh yeah, you know what, we need to continue to build on our MTSS. We need to continue to provide universal supports. We still need to, enlarge, like more intention in putting resources into tier 1, especially for mental wellness. How can we encourage our teachers to look at mental wellness in their classes? How can we continue to encourage our resource teachers to do the same, our EAs to do the same, like the entire community looking at universal supports, and how can we do that better? And so the toolkit was a great tool for us to have those conversations and to evaluate. Student well-being is very important to us as we are planning for our school. We really believe strongly that student well-being, wellness of the staff, wellness of the school community is vital, I think, for our students to be able to grow and to improve in their love of learning. And so we came across this toolkit. Definitely, I was looking for something that involves a school-wide approach and also is more holistic. I'm curious as well, like what parts are we missing as we're continuing doing to help lead our school. And so this toolkit was very easy to use. It's very simple. And the best thing, I think the most impactful thing about it is that as I gathered a couple of school leaders around the table to use this toolkit, one of the things that we found as a result is that it brought a deeper sense of awareness of what are the things that we can look at or we should be focusing on. And also just really good reflective practice. Like just by going around the table using this toolkit, it was a beautiful exercise of allowing time and space for every one of our school leaders to express some aspects of wellness from the arena of the school that they are leaders of. And so it was really impactful in that way. So the next step is actually taking the data, right? Taking the data from the toolkit to the teachers. We're going to be chatting with our teachers about some of our findings. Like I said, like what we were surprised with, what we were doing well, and what are areas that we're finding a little challenging, and we'd like to focus in on, and then get their feedback and get their thoughts about where we should go. We would also like to ideally use it with our parent community as well, solicit feedback from them and see what some of their thoughts are. Definitely, and also hearing students as well, specifically in terms of the supportive environment, having more conversations. And we were actually brainstorming, maybe even using a Google form to formulate some of the questions we want to hear our student voices, and then together as a community come up with a mental health strategy to ensure that we really put that as a forefront. How can we improve the mental wellness for our staff and for our students and for the families as we move forward?